Hey everybody, my name is Rosie and I am currently on staff as a resident with our Antioch Quincy location as of February 2021. And we planted our Quincy location in September, and I am so excited to get to be here representing that church to all of you this morning. Now before this role, I served as a missionary in Cambodia with Antioch for 3 years, starting in 2017. And for those of you that may not know, when we serve overseas with Antioch, we spend our first stint of 3 years over in the country where we've gone. And then we get to come home for 3 months to refuel, re-energize, and reconnect with our families, our friends, our supporters, and of course our churches that have sent us. And so I was asked to come and share today a testimony from the perspective of a missionary. I now share that testimony from the perspective of a past missionary in transition because, I'm not returning to Cambodia, and this was not the plan even as early as December of 2020. So things have drastically changed, and I'm here to share with you a little glimpse into who I am as a person and who God has been for me over this past year as a comforter. I never would have guessed I'd be in Massachusetts right now, but I truly am honored to be here with you and consider it a great privilege to share what the Lord has been teaching me. May the Lord bless you in some way as I share. If nothing else, I pray my testimony of freedom, healing, and growing in emotional awareness will spur you on as you hunger for the things of God. So we'll start my testimony with my time in Cambodia because honestly it was amazing, and I could probably talk for hours about the goodness that I saw of God over there. I loved learning the language. He provided so many opportunities to learn culture and connect with local people and create friendships that are deep and I would say lifelong lasting. And we even saw the beginning of our ministry over the past few years. And our ministry efforts in Cambodia, for the team in Cambodia, focus on church planting as a catalyst to eradicate human trafficking. And so I had actually gotten to this place of decision just before coming home on my furlough that I would stay there forever if it was God's will. I loved it. And in my heart, that was the commitment that I gave. And the place I was in, emotionally, spiritually, just physically ready for that to be my life. I absolutely loved it, and I could not wait to return to continue what I felt God was inviting me to there. But I came home for my regularly scheduled home assignment at the end of February 2020, and I was just as excited to get to do that because I hadn't seen people in so long, but I had a return flight for June of 2020, 3 months later. But given the fact I'm now on staff at a stateside church in Quincy, you can guess things took a turn in the opposite direction of returning to Cambodia. Like the rest of you in your 2020, my time home ended up looking very different than planned because COVID came to America 2 weeks after I did. So by the grace of God, I was not and have not been directly affected by COVID, the illness, but I was drastically affected, in a good way, by the silence it provided in my schedule. It gave me the ability to say to the Lord, refine me in whatever way you want. And that prayer actually came from, I got to attend one service in Brighton before COVID came, and that was a song they sang. And so I would just constantly be singing it and praying it to the Lord that he would do within me whatever it is he wanted to do to refine me. And, I would like to confess that was a dangerous prayer because he'll do it, if we mean it. And that's what this year has been, a time of refinement. Now, probably unlike most of you, I had literally nothing to do when COVID came and we were all sent for quarantine. No job, no kids, no ownership of any sort of property to maintain, no schedule, literally. I was simply here, waiting for this to be over. And early on, I found the stillness, the silence that I was being provided. I found it really frustrating and, in fact, rage-inducing, which is not my typical personality. I don't typically get easily angered, but it was happening because all my plans like all of yours, were crushed, one by one. And I felt like I was going through the grieving process for trivial things. So then I had shame and constant question of why is this so hard for me? I had food provided, I was with my family, it was great. But what I realized is I didn't know how to grieve things like that, the intangibles, the things you can't touch, smell, taste. The girls' weekend I had planned with my friends, stay at an Airbnb, get together. I hadn't seen them in 3+ years at that point. Or playing cars with my nephew, who when I left, he was 3 months old and so little, and now 3 years old and could talk and say my name. So many things that were planned that just couldn't be. I didn't lose a person. I lost intangible stuff, and I came to quickly realize our American culture doesn't have a precedent for mourning these things. It's something we all figure out on our own a little bit. I don't know about you guys, but there's never been any time off for these sorts of losses in any benefit package I've had at a job. So no time off for the dreams that go unfulfilled. There's no funeral home where you can go to mourn that dream that isn't going to come true or that sudden life change you weren't expecting. There's not a physical place we can go to do that where they walk us through the process of mourning. Or even the challenges that we maybe all faced as we're spending time with family, and that family dynamic is more rough than you imagined or remembered, because you're spending a lot more time together. So just grieving what you thought was, but in reality, you realize it's not anymore. And really, for the first time in my life, I was also confronted with my inability to know how to sit in suffering with my fellow brothers and sisters of different races, religion, sexual orientations, as they were going through extremely difficult events. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know, what my role was meant to be. I found myself questioning all of that. And what I've come to realize over this past year is that what the world has been forced to do this year in our shared suffering is actually what the church is supposed to do. We're supposed to be that place where we can sit with people in their suffering, a place for people to bring their suffering and we mourn together, a place where we cry out together for the comfort of the Lord. Mourning is not intended to be a completely private process, because there's comfort when others are in it with us. There's comfort when we allow God to enter into those places of deepest pain with us. Countless accounts in the Bible of mourning, public mourning, how it looks when friends come together, and even the way Jesus enters into it as we look at John 11, 1 through 35. That's a lot of verses. I'll let you read it on your own. But it's the story of Martha and Mary and Lazarus' death, and when they go and ask Jesus to come. And you can see there's people are all around them mourning. And even as Mary and Martha go to meet Jesus, the people question, are they going to a different location to mourn? Shall we follow them? And when they meet up with Jesus, it's that famous, really quick Bible verse that everyone can memorize, Jesus wept. It seems simple, but for me, it shows that even Jesus, he shows us how to live our lives. So if he pauses to mourn, how much more important is it for us to do that too in moments of pain? So I think we're realizing as a nation that we don't know how to mourn together. We don't know how to suffer with our friends, and if we don't know how to fix it, we would rather just stay away from it because it's uncomfortable. But what I've learned this year is we often don't have to fix their pain. That's the Lord's job, but it is our job to sit with them as they mourn. That's comforting. Let them feel their pain. Don't rush them. Let them seek and receive comfort from us and from the Lord, because they are choosing to mourn and honor their pain and loss. The same is true about our own suffering. Sometimes we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to fix it, so we just avoid it. We act like we can't feel the pain or that it doesn't bother us as much as it does. At least this is true in my life. I don't know. I hope that some of this is resonating with you. That is my hope in sharing my testimonies, that you will see some of your story in mine. We settle for momentary relief instead of comfort and healing. But Jesus says in Matthew 5:4, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." I read that and I think, that's a promise. It's also a directive. And it's even a how-to. If I want comforted, what do? I have to mourn. So if mourning leads to comfort, then everything else we're doing isn't going to give us what we need when we suffer loss and experience deep emotional pain. If I'm looking for comfort in my disappointment, my pain, my suffering, my transition, I need to mourn. I need to feel it. I need to express it. But I found myself asking how. I realized during this past year, I didn't know how to mourn. My idea of mourning was associated with the death of someone, and even in that, I found for me it was a pretty quick process. Someone passes away, I go see their body at the funeral, I accept it as reality, I move on. I've always needed some sort of physical experience to feel like I walked through my suffering. That is something I identified about me as a person. So imagine how hard it has been this year for me, trying to mourn intangible, but really deep heart things that didn't go as planned. Those things that no one else can see, but I know how I feel about them. I wanted nothing more than to hug my loved ones, but nope. I wanted nothing more. This is a big one. I'm still processing through this one. I wanted nothing more than to return to Cambodia in June of 2020, but nope. These, again, are the things that no one else can see the suffering in. So I want you to think about your own experience. What are those things for you that no one can see the suffering that you're going through? Because it's all tied to your emotions and how you felt about something or what you had been preparing under the surface, your desires. I realize the only way people can know what I'm going through is if I publicly mourn the loss of these dreams and goals I had for my time home and ultimately my life ahead when I think of Cambodia and what I was envisioned for over there. So needless to say, I've had a lot of time on my hands. And I've been studying mourning because in Scripture it's a very public thing. In the Psalms there's pattern to it, but I wanted some more specifics on not necessarily a method, like a lament or even, what to say exactly or a pattern for how to say my sorrows and proclaim the goodness of God. But I do have a worksheet for all of that if you want it, because typically I am a worksheet teacher. Well, I will give you a tool and let's go for it. But I didn't feel like that was what I was supposed to do today. So if you want that sheet on lament, hit me up. I'll give it to you. But I did study it, right? So what is mourning? And Dr. William Warden is someone I read and learned about, and he talks about 4 markers of mourning. First, acknowledge the loss, step 1. Step 2, feel it. Acknowledge the feelings you have associated with that loss. 3, adjust to the new reality. And 4, invest in that new reality. I read this and I'm thinking, okay, if mourning results in true comfort, then anything else we do in moments of disappointment, loss, pain, suffering, transition, will get us temporary relief, but not actually get us to the place of being able to invest in our current situations, in our present reality. Because we're too occupied with the painful thing. We're still going to feel it because we haven't been comforted in that place. It's always there, clouding our perspective, even if we don't know it. I like to think of it, I heard this analogy once, and it's as if, our suffering, our pain, our loss is all right here, right? And when we're feeling it, it's covering our heart. It's covering everything we see, the way we see it, the way we feel it. But what comfort and what mourning actually does for us, it allows us to kind of take that pain away from just being right in front of our face and the only thing we can see, and it allows us to get a new perspective. It allows us to really feel it, to live in it, but then also to understand and see the current reality of our situation as well. It doesn't go away. It's not like it didn't exist. It's still there, but our perspective changes and our ability to move forward becomes what we can do. And I don't know, how many kids watch these videos, so I'm going to describe some things we do instead of mourn, and you can hopefully understand where I'm taking us. So again, we should be mourning, but instead we're settling for relief. We crave comfort in situations of tension and pain. We don't like feeling these feelings, but instead of owning them, feeling them, getting comfort from them, freedom from the pain, like the Lord promises in Matthew 5:4, we settle for relief. to alleviate, which simply means just to lessen it. It doesn't mean to get rid of it. Complete freedom from it. So we avoid the feeling part. We avoid the mourning part, and we settle for temporary fixes. We watch things that aren't edifying. We get into relationships that aren't holy. We consume things that alter our mental capacity. We sleep, and we hide from the day. We overeat. We undereat. We self-medicate. We self-mutilate. We spend more money than we have. We daydream of alternative realities than the one where we find ourselves. All of these things are temporary fixes, and some I've used to try to comfort myself in moments of being unsettled. But then as soon as we stop doing that relief activity, it's right back. We're right back to where we started. Boom. It's in front of our face, and we can't see past it. We're faced with that disappointment again, that pain again, that suffering, etc. Having received no comfort because we didn't take the time, or, in probably a lot of our cases, we never learned how to do it. And we never understood the importance of mourning, of feeling those deep, painful feelings, because we didn't know they were going to lead us to the comfort we so desperately crave from Jesus. So what this year has shown me is that my true comfort, the kind that's fully satisfying and from the Lord, can only come when I mourn the losses, when I actually feel the pain and I don't ignore it. As I was praying for what to share this morning, I felt it strongly in my heart to expose my story, to be vulnerable with you all about the depth of the pain and the healing of this past year. So I invite you to come along with me as we journey through my testimony of mourning, and how the Lord has comforted me in places where I had been settling for relief for far too long instead of accepting his comfort, because I didn't know how to mourn, like I said, or why it was beneficial. And so if that is you this morning, if that is you today as you're listening, come along with me and see how the journey has been. Now, Matthew 5:4 is a promise, right? I said that earlier. And I want to claim this promise over our lives. So while trying to do a furlough during COVID provided me lots of practice with mourning and tangible losses, one of the results of the comfort I received during that time of processing these intangibles, the loss of these intangibles, was also the opening up of spiritual intimacy with the Lord. So I want to talk a little bit about how that comfort showed up when I was willing to actually admit how much hurt I was feeling that these different things weren't actually going to ever come to pass. Once I was willing to invite the Lord into places of pain, it's like he began to give me more tools to feel his presence. One area of intimacy was through my dreams at night. Guys, I hadn't dreamt probably more than 5 times that I could remember in probably 28 years. But in March 2020, that changed. My dreams began to be a place where I found comfort and reassurance that I was being obedient to the Lord. I would pray for guidance before I went to bed, and he would speak to me at night, at times waking me up to pray for something or to search scripture for words that led to comfort. So, I wasn't sure when I was jumping into this, okay, I want to mourn. I want to feel God. I want to feel again. That was actually my prayer. God, teach me how to feel. And the comfort was shown in such a variety of ways. And so I just want to say it may not look like one specific thing, but keep your eyes open, keep your heart open, and he will comfort you. Another place of freedom this past year was in my thought life. Identifying lies I believed about myself and working to replace those with truth of who I am in Christ. There was mourning in that process because I had to own up to what was stolen from my life as I had lived enslaved to thoughts of worthlessness and negativity about my identity. And they got really loud in Cambodia because there's not a lot of typical coping mechanisms when you're a completely different culture. And so those lies got really loud, and I didn't understand that the Lord's heart wasn't for me to actually believe those and think them because they had been a part of me my entire life. I didn't remember a time where I didn't think those things about myself. So I kind of assumed that was normal. And a lot was lost over the years as I look back to, again, step 1, identify the things lost. So as I did that, I realized I had lost confidence and trust in the Lord. Those were two major things. And I felt all kinds of horrible things about myself, which then led to me not jumping in fully to things, etc. So once I started mourning my loss of identity that Christ speaks over me, he began to break strongholds, specifically in regards to my thought patterns of worthlessness and lack of value. I found comfort, complete freedom from these lies, and the ability to walk out in confidence. It has been amazing. Again, if you identify with any of those statements I just made, there is comfort, there is breaking off of strongholds in that place as we go to the Lord. So as I mourned, I experienced comfort in numerous ways and freedom in my thought life. But once I decided to stay in the U.S., I found myself really struggling to commit to life here. I couldn't invest. I couldn't get to the end of the 4-step pattern, right, of mourning. I cried every single day, and I couldn't actually tell you why. I was crying, and the feelings associated with the tears, I had no idea why. So thankfully, I had the opportunity in March to go to a retreat center designed for people in ministry going through transition. Basically, therapy camp or emotional rehab is what I like to refer to it as. So I quickly realized I was potentially having difficulty being fully in the now because maybe I hadn't quite dealt with all the pain of a past trauma. I was stuck in it. And I just wasn't receiving comfort there. So I apparently kind of started thinking like, maybe I never fully acknowledged how these things made me feel again, because I didn't know how to do it with something that happened so long ago. And I couldn't honestly even imagine how like an unacknowledged loss from my childhood was affecting me today. Because I had forgiven people for things already. I had thought I was past it. But realizing that there was a deep-seated root of pain that I had never allowed the Lord to comfort. And so I was stuck. And I asked him, Lord, will you help me understand why I'm so angry at you? And he brought to the forefront something in the past that I had never dealt with and realized it was still affecting me to this day. So I'm going to take you back to the beginning to paint a more full picture of some of the healing I've gone through this year and the comfort I've received from the Lord as I've mourned things lost from trauma. So it's me, Rosie Elizabeth Holmes, born May 18th, 1984, 5:30 a.m. In Warren, Ohio is my hometown. I was 21 inches long, 9.5 pounds, so tiny. Green eyes, blonde hair. Now, what that precious, innocent child didn't know that day, and what no one else would come to know until 27 years after it happened, was that at 4 years old, I would become the child survivor of sexual trauma. This trauma attached itself to me in many ways. I pushed down the pain and ignored my feelings, emotions, because I was too young to understand them. I vowed secrecy. I lived in confusion of what happened and why. I was riddled with shame and fear. I held on to unforgiveness towards myself and others. I never received comfort from my earthly parents. They're amazing, but they had no idea this happened. So how could I receive comfort from them? I had never received complete comfort from my Heavenly Father because I never mourned the losses I suffered. In fact, the only time I came to my Heavenly Father about this was to ask why. Like, why did this happen to me? Why does this have to happen to people? Why? Why? Which is, I think it's a valid question, right? It is a valid question, why? But where I, came to realize is that I'll never get the answers to that question in this circumstance. And so when I think about how Matthew 5:4 relates to my story of suffering and the questions I have, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And I think kind of how that relates more to eternity. Like, there will be a day when all the tears will be wiped away. Complete comfort. Eternity with our Heavenly Father, where no child will be harmed like this. And I long for that day, right? We all do, I'm sure. But as long as we're on earth, there's evil, there's suffering. And the great thing is that on earth, we're also promised comfort. And I finally got to the point this year when my desire for comfort from this specific pain was my prayer to the Lord. My need to know why it happened became less of my focus. Again, that hand analogy, right? I kept asking why. I couldn't see past it. But my question began to focus, that question of why, I constantly put my focus on the enemy and what he had done versus, we know he comes to kill, steal, and destroy. So there's nothing good there. But God does say in Romans 8:28, he will work in all things for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purposes. So what happened is still evil. There are things that happen in all of your lives that are evil, and they will never be called good. And that fact will never change. But how I view that experience can change if I invite God into it. And so my desire for the Lord to redeem my story started to grow louder. My questions of why started to dissipate, and my just pleading for, Lord, come, give me comfort in these places of pain. Will you help me understand how I can move to the next thing, God, how I can really mourn this? I need help. Those became the louder prayers, the louder questions I had for God. So the mourning began. Like Dr. Warden said, it was time to identify the losses and attach feelings to them. I decided I would go there, one by one. I would attempt to identify all that I lost due to this evil event in my life, and then how I felt due to each loss, which is really hard for me. Because I found it really hard to verbalize my feelings. So before I was tired of trying, or I did this because I was really tired of trying to comfort myself, and it wasn't working, guys. None of those coping mechanisms were working. The pain just came right back and sometimes felt like it was louder. So I was still allowing the suffering to cause suffering, even though I believed in the Lord who said that he is a restorer and a redeemer. So I wasn't tapping into what I had access to. Now remember when we look at mourning, step 1, acknowledge the losses. Step 2, acknowledge how they made you feel. So that is what I've come to realize as I've studied mourning, especially now as I see it to a means to an end. We mourn, we get comforted. We mourn, he replaces it with joy. Me being stuck in that why God questioning pattern had kept me from ever receiving comfort in places of deep loss. So I do encourage you today, if you're resonating with this aspect of my testimony, ask the Lord, what's another question you could take to him about that situation? So when I went to the retreat center, my therapist asked me, tell me how you felt when the traumatic event took place. She went through all the traumatic events in my life, not just this one. I could not get any words to come out. I literally could not get the words to come out. And this is when I knew I needed help in the mourning process, because if I couldn't express my feelings, I wasn't fully able to mourn, which means I would never really be able to fully invest in the now. I had never taken the time to acknowledge all that was stolen during those encounters. I had forgiven people, I had forgiven myself, I had walked through that. All of that had happened over the last 5+ years, but I had never actually gone back, identified the losses, and worked through the pain of them. So I had some deep work to do. I had to acknowledge those events stole my innocence. I had to acknowledge those events caused me to lose my ability to express my emotions, because as a 4-year-old, you can't explain something like that. You don't even know what's happening. You don't understand what you're feeling. So therefore, all my emotions became very confusing. I had to acknowledge that I lost the complete carefreeness that is meant to be childhood. I lost control and power of my own body, and that made me fear for years it happening again. I lost trust in myself and others. And when your first memories are of a traumatic event like that, it's difficult to pinpoint all that was lost because you were too young to know what you should have had. And to decipher now what's not a healthy coping behavior, because I've been doing some of them my whole life. And so it's not until some of those iron-on-iron moments when I get to realize, oh, this isn't healthy, or oh, this isn't beneficial to myself or to others around me. So it's a process, guys. But as the Lord reveals, I've learned to mourn. So as he reveals something else I've lost, or as he reveals a lie I currently still believe about myself because of this past event or these past events, I mourn it. But now not one I do in secret, right? I don't mourn in secret anymore. Because I know there is value in inviting my friends, to mourn with me. It's comforting. There is value to mourn with the Lord. It's comforting. It provides freedom. It provides deepness in relationship with others and with him. And sometimes, I admit, you're probably looking at me thinking, okay, great, yeah, I've mourned that, and it feels like I'm not going anywhere. Like, right? It's this cycle. It comes back. But the truth is, you are going somewhere. It is a healing process, and it might be continuous, but there's always forward motion, even if it doesn't feel like it. Because the Lord promises that he is doing a new thing in us, replacing beauty for those ashes. You're not crying out the same tears, right? He's holding the ones you've already cried, and these are new ones. There's a new place of healing. There's deeper healing. There's more fullness in the healing as we mourn. So keep doing it, guys. As he draws things to your mind today that still cause you deep pain, go there with him. Tell him what you're feeling. Let him comfort you. Let the body of Christ be a comfort as well. So I do want to share a little bit about how other believers were a part of my healing process so that you can see how you can be that for someone else, or maybe this morning how I am being a little bit of that story for you too. Because I chase after the promises, right? When we read things in the Bible, those are intended for us. The promise of Matthew 5:4, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. I wanted it. And for all these years, I had silenced my voice and my emotions without even realizing it. Again, until somebody just, actually in Cambodia, started calling me out for it. Just saying, hey, I noticed that you really struggle with hesitancy to speak and verbally share difficult emotions in difficult situations. I agreed these were character traits I had. I knew them my whole life. I just thought I got it from my dad. And I just thought it was who I was. Because again, from my earliest memories, this is how I had been. It was just my personality. I was shy, right? It's not that I wasn't feeling things. I was just shy to share them. I'm a deep feeler and thinker, but rarely would I speak about the deepest points of pain. Because I questioned, well, why would they want to know that? Or what's the point of even doing that? What are they going to do about it? Those were questions that ran through my mind. But what I'm learning now is this ability to kind of get out what it is we're feeling and identify it and own it and cry about it, mourn about it. That's when the comfort comes. And the Lord had a new name to give me in those places. But I had to be willing to give him access. He's not going to force his way in. And one way I relied on inviting him in was through my mourning. So anytime now I feel some sort of anxiety or I feel some sort of discomfort in a situation, I'm quicker to ask him, Lord, what's this about? What is this feeling about? And what am I meant to do with it? Or can you come be with me here? Because he is, guys, he is. And we just have to invite him in. When we mourn, he meets us, just as he met with Mary and Martha at the death of Lazarus. What that shows us is that there is power in the mourning corporately. In that story, Jesus knew he was about to raise Lazarus from the dead, but he still paused to mourn his death because he cared. He loved them. We take our cues from Jesus and how to do life. So we need to pause. It's important to honor our losses in order to fully receive what the Lord has bestowed upon us. We comfort those in mourning by simply mourning with them, like Jesus did. Not by fixing their situation, by being still. The key word there is fully receive. I lived a very successful and full life before this year. I was fine. But was I? I was not living a full life. There was deep-seated pain that needed comfort that no one even knew I was going through. And now I'm more fully living because of tapping into the power and promises of what happens when we authentically mourn and identify our feelings caused in suffering. It's not just for our benefit of moving on, but it's also to fulfill the purpose of the church, which is to comfort those in our midst who are also in affliction. If we don't ourselves pause, though, to receive the comfort promised, it feels difficult to be a comfort to another in the fullest sense of the word, right? If I've never sat in my own suffering, how can I even expect myself to sit with you in yours? So first, we look in, right? And then we can be a comfort to those outside. As it says in 2 Corinthians 1, 3-4, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction, with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. Again, we receive the comfort, we give the comfort away. These verses have such meaning also on this journey of recognizing that I craved comfort from the pain of the past. The only reason I ever spoke a word about this is because I was in the discipleship school and other people testified to who God was as a restorer and a comforter in deep places of pain. I had never spoken a word of that traumatic event when I was 4 years old until somebody else testified to the fact that traumatic events had happened in their life, and look at what the Lord had done. Glory, glory. And so our testimonies are powerful because they give God the glory he is due in our lives. They are what points people to Jesus. So I encourage you, don't hold yours back. When you're given the opportunity to share it, share it. Maybe not for this long, but for however long, guys. What is that you want to share with the person who asks you, where's the hope after this season of hopelessness that the world is facing? You know, I've never been more passionate to proclaim from the rooftops that the enemy truly is defeated by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, like it says in Revelation 12:11. So I come before you today, expectant that by hearing this bit of my testimony, through the spoken word of my testimony, chains will fall in your homes as you listen. My testimony of freedom, specifically it relates to my emotional health, is also yours to claim. And your testimony of who God has been in your life could potentially be the catalyst to someone else calling upon the name of the Lord and receiving freedom from bondage to sin's effect on their life. It's a powerful thing to know that we serve such a big God. And if I'm being honest, I came to you this morning hesitant because my default when doing stuff like this is not to be super vulnerable. It's to let you in enough so you feel like I'm being vulnerable, but really there's a lot of other things behind the curtain. So, I think that's probably a lot of our defaults when we talk about parts of our testimony that are painful or maybe had the deepest shame attached to them before the Lord came into our lives. Or maybe right now you're experiencing shame and guilt and pain that's never been exposed. And we're slow to bring those things up for fear, for whatever reason you want to list. Or maybe it's just because you haven't learned how to take that pain to the Lord, mourn it with him, and walk into the next thing he has for you, which may just be even deeper healing and deeper mourning. And I'm here to say that's okay. It's been quite a journey for me as well. And so, I encourage you just to be as vulnerable as possible, which is what I felt like the Lord encouraged me to do today. And thank you for sitting with me as I shared bits of my suffering. Because you're here, because you are listening, because I know we now have this shared experience of going through my journey. I'm comforted by that, guys, by knowing that you're in it with me. You know I'm on a continual process of healing and deeper connection with the Lord, and you know what it looks like in a very intimate way. So I hope this message today sparks conversations with you and the Lord, between the two of you, with you and each other, with you and your coworkers. The list could go on and on. Even with you and yourself, okay? Step one, maybe talk to yourself as well. We're called to be witnesses to those around us, continuously testifying to the power of the gospel so the enemy is forced to flee. And we believe in faith that the hearer of our testimony will be encouraged through the Holy Spirit to call upon the Lord as their Savior too. My prayer is that you leave this message chasing after the promises of God we read in Scripture. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. The Lord wants to comfort you. He doesn't want us to settle for relief. He has more. He has fullness in life. Won't you let him in? So, thank you for the honor of sharing this morning. It was a pleasure to be with you.